All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back for another awesome episode of the Fit 40 podcast. We have a guest that has been on this show before. I wanted to say recurring, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to test my vocabulary this early, but we have by far the most popular guest on the podcast back in action, the queen of GLP-1s. We have Dr. Gabby Gerbino in the house.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun doing it the last time, so I feel like I'm a little less nervous than the first time. So I'm excited to talk about all these medications.
Absolutely. I can't wait to pick your brain because there's been a lot of really cool stuff coming out since the last time that we talked. And I know
Mhm.
that there are definitely people listening right now that heard our first conversation and probably stuck around for all the other cool episodes in between. And now they're probably in a place where it's like, okay, I've been on these GLP-1s for however long. I've lost this much weight. I really don't want to dish out this much money or like deal with like not being able to eat for the foreseeable future if that's a possibility. So what we're going to do today is cover that in full. So, Gabby, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's do this thing. So, let's start it off with just like, are there any like big highlights that have come out in the past, say, 6 months as far as GLP-1s or anything as far as semaglutide, tirzepatide, or
Mhm.
any other compounds that have come out that have been big news?
Right. So I know that there's a lot of research going on, and there actually is some like monoclonal antibodies that are coming out like down the pipeline. But as far as GLPs go, there are two studies that came out recently that are showing that the GLPs are actually like preventative for cardiovascular disease, as far as like if you've had like a heart attack, a stroke, anything like that. We actually are getting GLPs covered under insurance for those patients, whether their BMI is 20 or their BMI is 40. It doesn't matter what your BMI is. It doesn't matter if this is weight loss. This is actually for like cardiovascular protection. So that's
So,
one of
not
like the big
only are you
studies.
going to get sexier, you're going to get healthier.
Exactly. Exactly. And it makes sense if we can decrease our body mass index and we can be basically feel better, healthier, those sort of things. Like it's going to help our heart, take the
Yep.
stress off of our heart, and help to improve our lifestyle.
Perfect. Love that. I mean, that's incredible. I know that there was
Mhm.
stuff potentially coming out, and I'm sure that we're going to learn more about it as far as the addiction side of things too, because
Oh,
apparently
yeah,
it
yeah,
has some
yeah.
sort of impact on that. Has anything
Yes.
in that realm come out?
So I haven't seen any specific studies, but there is talks of that because a lot of what at least I hear my patients say too when it comes to the GLPs is it's helping with that like food noise. A lot of patients will say that they used to wake up and be like, what am I eating for breakfast? What am I eating for lunch? They like have that food noise. It's constantly in their head. I need to eat because it's 12 o'clock and I have to eat. And a lot of patients have said that that food noise has basically stopped while on the GLPs. So they're using that and that concept to see if it helps patients that struggle with addiction, like that craving for whatever they're addicted to. And I know I've heard like talks that that's coming down the pipeline as well. So I'd honestly be really excited to hear that because that's revolutionary.
Absolutely. I mean, I know you can argue till you're blue in the face about like people saying it's cheating or it's this or it's that. But at the end of the day, we take medications for anything under the
Right.
sun because it makes life more enjoyable. And if we
Right.
can do that, why the hell not?
Right. And that's what I'm trying to do. And one of the biggest things that I talk to my patients about is taking that stigma away from the term obesity and overweight and that sort of thing. Like I try to, when I talk to my patients, I talk to them about their BMI, obviously, because we use that as a gauge of where they're at. But I try to take that stigma away from obesity and tell them that this is a chronic illness. Your weight gain, what you've been struggling with, your weight loss, whatever it is, this is a chronic illness, just like you take a medication for your high blood pressure, for your diabetes, whatever it is. This is the same thing. And we have to, as a culture population, we have to take that stigma away from obesity because there are so many times that I talk to people and I'm like, oh, you look great, you've lost weight. And you could tell that they don't want to tell you that they're on one of these
Yeah.
medications because they feel like there's this like stigma, like, oh, I'm cheating,
Well,
like you
there
said. And
there's
it's
plenty of people in my area of professionalism that love to make people feel like shit because they're not doing it their way.
right. Right. And that's I personally believe there's no right or wrong way to do anything. If it's helping you and it's helping you feel better and get a better quality of life, that's my biggest takeaway for my patients is like, I want you to have a better quality of life. And whatever that may be, whatever I can do to help you, that's what you need. Like, there shouldn't be this like, oh, you're on Ozempic, like, shh, like, hush, hush. It's like this like secret thing. Like, we have to take that stigma away from it.
Yeah. And we also need to be realistic too, because I mean, as much as people don't want to admit lifestyle modification, it is the first thing that doctors should bring up based on the
Correct.
guidelines, which
Correct.
many, many do. And people still don't do it. So it's like,
Right.
what are we left with?
Right. And that's why I don't know if I mentioned this on the when we spoke the last time, but with all of my patients that come in and tell me that they need help losing weight, I don't immediately prescribe a medication to them. We start off on our first encounter. I talk to them about diet and lifestyle changes, and I say to them, I want you to do this for a month, and I want you to come back to me in a month. We'll run some labs, make sure that there's nothing medically causing your weight gain. And I want to see your food diary. What are you eating? I want to see that you've implemented some sort of exercise routine. And I don't need you to do anything crazy. I just want to see that you're getting yourself a little bit active, like increasing your heart rate, doing something. Because what I'll mention when we get into everything else is that if you do those diet and lifestyle changes, the medications not only work better, but will help you in the long run if you ever do want to decrease your dosage or get off the medication completely.
Yeah, which is definitely something we're going to dive into.
Yeah.
So, before we get into the maintenance side of things, let's
Mhm.
talk about like setting yourself up for success. So, if somebody is listening to this and they're doing their due diligence and they're like, listen, I saw this podcast episode, it's all about maintaining, but I'm just starting. Like,
Mhm.
how should they start to set themselves up for success so that they can maintain all the weight that they lose and not have to worry about it coming back?
Right. So I think that in combination with a really good coach or dietitian or whatever you may need, getting a really, really good plan as far as what are you eating during the day. I don't know if this is right, you can tell me. It's called the TDEE
Yeah.
calculator for my
Yeah.
patients. And I show them this is how many calories you should be eating during the day. I want you to write down what you're eating. I want you to see if you're in that caloric range or whatever it is to make sure that you're obviously in a deficit, because no matter what, it's always calories in, calories out. If you're eating too much, or if sometimes I see that my patients are just not even eating enough, they're eating too little and they're not even getting the nutrients that they need. So I always start with that. And then implementing some, like I said, some sort of exercise routine. The guidelines recommend at least 100 minutes of activity during a week. Obviously more is better, but something that's going to increase your heart rate, whether it's walking, doing resistant training, whatever it is. That's more your area of expertise than mine. I'm not the best when it
Yeah.
comes to the exercise part of it, and I will not lie, we don't get that training in medical school. We get very little training as far as like the exercise and the dietary stuff, so I tend to steer my patients to the people that are experts in that area. But setting yourself for success and having that routine implemented first, so that when you come to your first visit with me, I can see like, okay, you're trying, you have implemented these changes, you're actively in that part of your life where you're like, I'm ready to lose weight and I'm ready to make that change. Because if you're not there, you're not going to get the success that you want. And you need to be in that like the right mindset to lose weight. You have to be at the point where you're like, I'm ready to do this and I'm in that phase of my life, because the medications aren't a quick fix and it's not going to fix everything. You need to be able to change other things before I personally even start my patients on any medication.
Exactly. And I think a good spot to hone in on is the fact that you were talking about not eating too little, because
Mhm.
I know I love hopping in these support groups on Facebook just to see what people are going through, because like I want that like leg up when somebody comes to me and says, I got this going on, that going on. And I'll be like, oh, I've seen people dealing with this and I've consulted professionals like
Right.
Dr. Gerbino and others, and I know exactly what to do. So a lot of people complain about basically malnutrition side effects, which are hair loss,
Yep.
nails and skin getting brittle, like feeling really low energy.
Mhm.
Like, are those all pretty much malnutrition, or does the drug actually do something that may affect all of that?
So as far as the research shows, it's not doing anything as far as like basically not giving you enough nutrients. For the most part, a lot of those side effects come from patients not eating enough because they feel full. So like we said, like I explained the last time, the way the medication works is it slows down your digestion. So you're going to feel full a lot quicker. So you end up, patients say they end up eating less, but they also sometimes will tell me that they're not drinking enough water because they don't have that feeling of hunger. So they just feel like, well, I'm not hungry, so why should I eat? When that's obviously the wrong way to think about it. Just because the medication's helping you lose weight and maybe helping you get into a calorie deficit, turning off that noise, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you should stop eating completely. And a lot of those side effects that patients complain of is because of that, because they're just not eating enough, or they're not eating at all. Like they'll come to me and say they're only eating maybe 1,000 calories a day, which is not enough to sustain your body in the slightest bit whatsoever. So I usually instruct my patients at least 100 grams of protein a day. Like protein is key for these patients, and obviously drinking water. Like water is also key because one of the side effects is it can cause what's called like an AKI, or a little bit of a kidney issue, because you're not drinking enough water. And a lot of this just comes from the fact that like I said, you don't feel hungry, you don't feel thirsty. So the patient's just like, okay, I'm not going to eat and I'm not going to drink. And that's where a lot of these side effects come from.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, because I think there are a lot of people that, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've had a few people tell you this too, where it's like they get that taste of, oh my God, the scale's finally moving for the first time in 20, 30, 50 years. Or like, this is the first time my clothes have actually fit loose on me. And they kind of get that like hit of, okay, I just got to keep doing what I'm doing, which is like eating next to nothing.
Right. Right. And that's the wrong, like exactly. It's the wrong way to think about it, because they do. I get patients that come in, they're so excited. They're finally losing weight. They feel great. And I just have to reiterate to them, like, yes, you're doing great, but like make sure you're still getting the nutrients that you need. Like the medication is an adjunct, it's helping you, but without those nutrients, you're gonna feel tired. You may have hair loss and those sort of things. But the scale will still move. Like it's not like you don't need to eat at all. Like the scale will still move. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do need to be educated on what healthy weight loss looks like, because a lot of people are like, oh, the faster the better, the more the better. And it's
No.
like, no, like we want somewhere between half a pound to 1% of your body weight is usually like the upper end of that,
Right.
where you're losing about that on average per week. Are you going to lose that every single week? No.
Right.
Sometimes you may even gain weight because you had one random meal that drove it way up, or for a number of different reasons.
Right.
But like you kind of have to be in that mindset of, I want to hit this range, not more is better.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't remember who said this to me, but like one bad meal is not going to make you fat and one good meal is not going to make you skinny. So
Yep.
it's like that same mindset. And I tell my patients, like when they come in, they're like, oh, I'm not losing weight fast enough. I'm like, it's not a sprint. It's a
Yeah.
marathon. Like it's okay. Like if you
And
lose
that
weight,
also, oh, sorry.
no,
I
no,
didn't mean
you're
to
fine.
cut you
You're
off.
fine. Go.
I,
No,
was-
you're
I
good.
was going to say that also gets into a really good topic, which is fat loss versus weight loss, which are not the same thing. So like a
Correct.
lot of people, I literally just talked about this on the podcast I'm releasing tomorrow. I had a client that lost 1 single pound over the entire summer, but when we took her measurements and used the Navy method, the Navy SEAL method of calculating body fat percentage and all that, she lost 3% body fat, 7 pounds of fat, but gained 6 pounds of muscle. But the net
Right.
result was 1 pound lost, but she lost 7 pounds of fat,
Right.
which is gigantic. Like that's a gigantic influence on your health going forward.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. And like that's a thing I try to reiterate to patients too, especially on these medications, is that I'm sure you've heard a lot about, they say like the Ozempic face and things like that. If you're not eating the amount of protein, and you want to lose fat, you don't want to lose muscle. And if you are dropping weight super quick, you're not eating enough, and you're dropping, like you said, too much weight, more than a pound or even a half a pound a week, you're going to get that muscle mass loss. You may have that Ozempic face, they call it. And that's not what we want. We want fat loss. We don't want muscle loss.
Yes. And that's the real theme here when it comes to setting yourself up for success, is really honing in on either maintaining at the bare minimum or gaining muscle
Right.
along the journey. Because I
Right.
know that there were some, I don't know if you saw these or not, or maybe I'm cherry picking here, but there were some correlational studies showing that the chances of maintaining your success post GLP-1s is strongly correlated with the amount of lean muscle that you lose.
Right,
or
right. No, that's
or
true. Yeah.
inversely. So it's like the more you lose, the higher risk you are to gain it all back. The
Right.
more fat lean body mass that you lose.
Right, right, exactly. Because basically, like if you basically put yourself, say we're putting ourselves in starvation because you're on these medications, you're not eating at all, and all of a sudden you stop the medicine, your body's going to be like, all right, let's go. Like I want all of it back. A lot of patients will say that they get increased hunger. They feel like they want to eat more. And it's basically just your body being like, all right, let's build this muscle back. Like, let's get our energy back because we've been in starvation mode for so long.
And there's also different types of training too, because we know for sure high intensity interval training, like this
Mhm.
HIT style of training, makes you ravenous. It makes
Right,
you very, very hungry. So if you're doing these high intensity classes, maybe test out doing a strength training program that's a little bit less intense as far as like when it comes to the rest periods, you get more rest and then you're able to give more on each set. So then you get more muscle from doing this because you can produce more force, which will lead to more muscle. Okay. And on top of that, you don't drive your body crazy to the point where it's ravenous. Like you will get a bump in hunger, but it's not going to be
mm,
like, all right, where's the nearest Starbucks?
right. Right, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And that's also something that comes with exercise, which is great because the fact that you are hungry means that your metabolism is doing its job. Like your
Mhm.
body is requiring more calories, which
Right,
is good, but
exactly.
you need structure in place.
Right,
And I think that's a big thing too when it comes to the maintenance side of things that people aren't understanding, where it's like, well, this drug is, I'm just eating less of what I normally eat, or I'm eating good foods most of the time, but then they come off and it's like all the cravings kick back in, all the old habits kick back in. And it's like there's
right,
nothing, there's no, I always think of like bowling bumpers. Like you're always going to hit the pins, you're always going to stay on track if the bumpers are up. But if you drop the
right,
bumpers, then you're kind of screwed.
right, right. And that's so a lot of the reason behind implementing these lifestyle changes with these medications is that the studies have shown that if you stop the medication and you haven't done anything, no diet or lifestyle changes, you're going to gain the weight back. Not all of it, but you are going to gain some of the weight back.
And then it just turns into another fad diet where you have
Mhm.
now taken away from your lean body mass, which is like if anybody's ever heard, oh, you're not even, it's not even worth dieting because you're going to put yourself in a worse place afterwards. That's where that narrative comes from, where
Right,
you lose all this weight super fast, you take away from your muscle, and then you gain it all back and you're in a worse place. So
right,
as long as you don't do that, you're good.
right. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to people that have done this the right way, let's say they did preserve their lean body mass and they're in a really good spot and they're like, okay, listen, I just can't foot this bill anymore. Like, I can't keep dishing out this much money. Or they just want to say, listen, I want to see if it's possible not to be on this drug. For a lot of like, what are the percentages like, if you know any,
Mhm.
or like, what is the chances that somebody could come off this drug and not be one of the lifers?
Right. So there's two studies that I'll reference. There was one that came out of JAMA Network. Don't worry about that. But there was one study that came out and it was over 60, I believe it was over 68 or 20 weeks. I'm sorry, I'm like looking at it. There's two studies. One was 68 weeks, one was 20 weeks. They separated the two groups for the 20 weeks. One group did semaglutide and the other group did placebo. And then they basically they stopped the groups and then still followed them afterwards. The patients that obviously continued on semaglutide continued to lose weight and they had the same results. And the patients who were stopped and they stopped everything, stopped like their lifestyle changes, everything like that, the withdrawal group, they gained about 7% of their body weight back. So anything or
That's
their
still
weight
not
gain.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah. They're so whatever they lost, I'm sorry, they gained back about 7% of that. So,
Okay.
and that was without implementing like any diet or lifestyle changes. Now, the other study that was the step one trial, that was over 68 weeks. And again, they had the patients stop the medication completely and stop the diet and lifestyle changes. And after withdrawal, so some of those patients, I believe it said they gained about 2/3 of the weight back that they had lost. So a little bit more than the other study.
So
So
how long was the withdrawal period?
the withdrawal period, so the step one study, the withdrawal period was a year. They watched them
Okay.
over a year time. And over a year time after stopping the medication, they gained back 2/3 of the weight that they had lost.
Gotcha.
And that
Gotcha.
was completely stopping it, not implementing any diet or lifestyle changes. The other one is the withdrawal was that was over 48 weeks. I'm
Okay.
looking at it now. I was like, I get confused with the numbers. So they did the groups of patients did 20-week trial with the medication, and then they stopped the medication and they followed them for 48 weeks afterwards. And after 48 weeks, that's when they saw that those patients that had stopped the medication gained back 7% of the weight that they had lost.
Wow. Yeah.
So not terrible, but obviously they're gaining weight back. But again, all of these studies were done when they stopped the medication and they followed them. They stopped any of the lifestyle interventions that they were doing with the patients originally, because when they did the studies and the patients were on the semaglutide, they were implementing a lifestyle change with them as well and implementing those skills. But once the 20-week period, the other period was done, the 68 weeks, they stopped everything completely. So it does make sense that they were to gain some of that weight back, because they're just going back to what they were doing previously when they had gained weight.
Yeah. And it shows that the weight doesn't come on like immediately.
Right.
It's slow. You kind of fall back into these patterns slowly, but they do come
Correct.
back.
Correct.
And you got to figure out what exactly you need to do to not do that.
Right. Exactly. And that's why the lifestyle interventions are so important for these patients before they start the medication, to really implement those changes, because there's two schools of thought as far as maintenance for these medications goes. You can either decrease the dose, because the highest dose is 2.4 on the semaglutide. So this is I'm talking about the weight loss medication, not obviously the one for diabetes. So once you get to 2.4, what I usually do with my patients, and again, unfortunately, there's no scientific evidence yet as far as maintenance goes. We just have these two studies that have shown the weight gain. But what I
Mhm.
do is, once they're at that max dose and they're at the weight that they would like to be, we're at a healthy BMI, we're doing everything we should do, I usually discuss with my patients at that time about decreasing their dosage back to a possible maintenance dose. So again, there's no scientific evidence, unfortunately, but I just usually decrease my patients down to maybe the lowest dose or the second to lowest dose. And we try that for like a maintenance period and see,
Mhm.
do they gain weight? Do they maintain their weight? If they maintain their weight and they continue to do these diet and lifestyle changes, then I just continue to have the conversation with the patient about, like you said, is this financially a burden for them? Do they want to continue the medication? Is their insurance covering it? Or do we want to try to just come off the medication completely while still implementing those diet and lifestyle changes, with the mindset that if the patient has a chronic condition, as in PCOS, where they are insulin resistant or they've struggled with certain things that cause weight gain, they may gain some weight back. And again, it goes back to this idea that obesity is a chronic illness, and that some of these illnesses, PCOS, that we talk about a lot, that have high insulin resistance, these are chronic illnesses. So these medications are something that we should be using to treat their chronic illness, and they may not be able to ever get off the medication if they want. But for the patients that have maybe struggled with their weight their whole life, they get down to a really healthy weight, they're comfortable, they've implemented the diet and lifestyle changes, I usually try to take them off of it and see how they do. And there are success stories. There's patients that have come off of it completely and they don't gain any weight. They maintain it. They feel good because they've done those changes beforehand.
Yeah. And I know when again, I'm creeping in these groups and I like also like try and listen to people who have had these success stories. What people, especially in the fitness field and the nutrition field, they call cheating and all that, what they don't realize is that when people do these drugs and their weight comes down, all of a sudden it gets easier, not just because the food noise is gone and all that,
Mhm.
but like a lot of people, because of that extra body fat they're carrying, have metabolic dysfunction, which
Right.
makes the whole process so much harder. Like
Right.
they have
Because,
insulin
right.
resistance or like
Right.
PCOS or any of these other things that come up, like having this extra weight just makes it so much harder. So you're stacking so many cards against you.
Right, exactly. Because our fat cells are what is the driver for that insulin resistance. So the more fat you have in your body, the more insulin resistant you're going to become. So if we can obviously decrease that fat, decrease your weight, and help to improve that insulin resistance, the results are so much better. And
Yeah.
I've had patients, and I have heard of patients that have done these medications, they've lost the weight and they have PCOS, and they've actually cured their PCOS. Like, they're back to having a normal life. They don't have to worry about that insulin resistance anymore, because the driving factor of PCOS a lot of the time is that weight gain and that insulin resistance. So, but again, these are chronic lifelong illnesses that patients may struggle with, and they may need to be on the medication long term. But again, it has to be like a case to case basis. Not every patient is the same, and I don't treat every patient the same, because just because you have one thing or you're on one medication doesn't mean that you're going to react the same as somebody else.
Exactly. And also, on the same note as insulin resistance, obviously losing body fat helps a ton. But guess what else is really good for insulin sensitivity? Building muscle. So
Exactly.
you're hitting it with a 1-2 combo right there. So people that are insulin resistant or possibly like pre-diabetic, it
Mhm.
is in your favor to,
Right.
one, exercise and build that muscle, and two, bring the body fat down.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. The more muscle you have, the less fat you have on your body, the better off you will be. Possibilities are endless.
Yep, yep. And the other thing too is like possibly less joint pain, because a lot of people will burn more calories. They will be able to
Hmm.
keep this weight off if they can stay active, but a
Right.
large population of people are in chronic pain. They just
Right.
can't do what we need them to do because they physically can't.
Correct. Exactly. And that's why the medications are great for that too. Those patients that really struggle with working out because they have a lot of weight on their knees, on their ankles, on their hips, whatever it may be. And these medications can help them at least kickstart a little bit of that weight loss along with diet changes, but kickstart a little of that weight loss. So then if they can lose a little weight, take that pressure off the knees and everything, and then maybe they can start exercising a little bit, and then even the weight will come off even quicker.
Exactly, exactly. It just kind of all snowballs into this great thing.
Hmm.
Now, for the people that need to keep it like forever, are
Hmm.
there any consistencies with that, whether it be the chronic pain or something like that? Are there certain populations where it's like, yeah, they usually have to just keep doing this?
Hmm. Um, like I said, it depends on their chronic illnesses. So if I have a patient who, say they've had a heart attack, obviously we now have these new studies. If they've had a heart attack and I put them on this medication, I'm going to keep them on this medication long term, whether they've done the diet and lifestyle changes, because of the research showing that it is helpful with that cardio protection. I don't want my patient to have another heart attack or have a stroke or something like that. So in those patients, it is something that I will discuss with them, that this is a lifelong medication, that this is something that's going to be protective for you. It's going to protect your heart, possibly your kidneys, all these studies that are coming out. So those are the type of patients that I really discuss with them being on these medications long term, because any increase in weight gain for these patients could result in another event, another heart attack, another stroke, whatever it may be. For my PCOS patients, it just depends. I talk to them about, once they lose the weight, how are they feeling? Have their cycles regulated? Are their hormones more controlled? Are they still having the symptoms they were having previously? For those patients, I may discuss with them staying on the medication long term, or we may discuss taking them off of it, just depending on the conversation I have with the patient. But definitely with these new studies coming out, as far as the cardiovascular protection and things like that, those patients I really will push to stay on the medication long term, because the mortality benefit is wonderful. The studies showed that it's decreasing their mortality, that they're decreasing the amount of heart attacks and strokes afterwards. So this is just like any other lifelong medication that we use for patients. It's just something that they should be on, and it should be like our standard of therapy. It hasn't obviously been implemented as a standard of therapy from the powers that be, all of the societies and everything like that. I'm sure it may be down the road. But we are, as physicians, we're guided by the research. I'm always looking at the new studies, everything like that. And I just talk to my patients about that, say, this is what the research is showing. And most of them are pretty open to continuing the medication as long as being covered, obviously, and it's not a
Yeah.
financial burden for the patient.
Which brings us to our next point. So I'm going to take the reins here and talk about, because I know we've been alluding to like exercise, structure, habits, and things like that. So basically, what I'm going to give you guys right now is a roadmap to follow while you're on the GLP-1s, and then potentially when you wean off, if you're able to, or if you're on a maintenance dose for life, it still works. Okay. So first and foremost is exercise. Like Gabby, you mentioned, where we want at least that 100 minutes per week. But I know some people hearing that are probably like, holy crap, that's a lot compared to nothing right now. Don't
Right.
worry, anything is better than nothing. So I know when I went to go give a lecture for you guys, we talked about step count. One of the simplest things you could do is just get a step tracker. Like they
Mhm.
have pedometers on Amazon for like $10. You could just pick one of those up. And if you just track, I'm not saying you have to actively do anything. If you
Mhm.
just pay attention, on average, you're going to get 2,000 steps. So if you are a seriously sedentary person, literally just buying a pedometer could literally just like change your entire life. So start with that. Just start with steps. And then if you can get to like 5, 7, great. 7,000 steps, that's awesome. You don't need to chase 10K per day because that was a marketing term. It's not actually a thing. Just get yourself to
Good
a
to know.
place. Yeah, just get yourself to a place where you can do it, where it doesn't hurt your joints and you feel good throughout the day. That's usually somewhere between 5 to 10K. And anything past that is like, it's extra and it's great, but it's not necessary. And then when it comes to like strength training side of things, it's real simple. If you guys go into a gym or you have a dumbbell at home or something, the simplest way that I've seen incredible results with clients, we've done 20-minute workouts and seen people get absurd results. And it's literally just from working every muscle in the body. So you do first is something pushing, something pulling, something for your legs, and something for your abs. Just 4 things, cycle through in 20 minutes, however many rounds you can get. And then if you're able to do that, like at the gym, you go to the machines and say, okay, is this a press or a pull? You pick one that says press, do that for like 8 to 12 repetitions. And you do that for 3 or 4 rounds. And then once you're done with that, go to the next thing. Go to something that says pulling, like a lat pull down, or a row is also a pull. Do one of those, 8 to 12 reps. Then you could do a squat or a bridge or an RDL. Any of those things work your legs. That would be really good for your leg exercise for, again, 8 to 12 reps, 3 to 4 rounds. And then last but not least is core. We all know core. We know planks, crunches. Farmer carries are a really good one. If you guys haven't tried that, that is one of my absolute favorites to start with, is a farmer carry. Just pick up heavy dumbbells and just walk around for 30 seconds and then put it down, do that 3 or 4 rounds for 30 seconds. And if you say 3 or 4 rounds is too much, that's totally cool. You could go in day one and just do one set, just one set of everything, get comfortable with it, and then grow and build as you go. Okay. So if you're at home, you could do that all in a circuit, like I said, for 20 minutes. Or if you're at the gym, you could just do it one at a time for 1 to 4 sets. Okay. And then when it comes to the structure side of things with the food, everybody hears calories. That's a really good way to go because it's very accurate. If you're accurate, if you weigh everything and make sure you're not guesstimating and you're not eating out too much, because on average, if you eat out a lot, that's going to drive your calorie way up, even though the menu might say 1,000 calories, it's probably like 12 or 1,400 because the chefs really don't care as long as you're saying, oh, this is tasty. And Ryan can attest to that, right?
Yes, yes, yes. My husband, for those listening, my husband is a chef, so he can attest to all those things. He doesn't measure a lot of the time. He just kind of throws it in as he goes. So I can 100% attest to that one.
Yep. And if for some reason, I know calorie counting turns a lot of people off, tracking in some shape is usually best. And it doesn't require just calories either. Like, for example, when calorie counting is brought up, anybody who has a history of any type of disordered eating or eating disorders usually does not do well with that. So,
Mhm.
what do you do instead? One of my favorite things to do is to track PFC, which is like the core thing that we do in the Fit 40 program, which is your protein, your fiber, and your color. So if you can get 3 meals a day, we'll talk about the structure of it, but if you can get 3 meals a day where you put a lean source of protein on the plate, something that is like a lean meat, like chicken, turkey, fish, or easiest way to do it, if you see the nutrition label and you see how many grams of protein there are, put a zero next to that. And if it's that many calories or less, it's lean. You're good. So if you can get one of those servings about the size of your palm on the plate, you're good to go. And then if you get the choice of a carb, whether that be like something white bread or like a tortilla or something, if you make the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to go with the whole grain option, or I'm going to go with potatoes or rice instead of French fries, like that would count as fiber because you're getting fiber in those sources instead of the white flour, which usually gives you none. So opting for fibrous carbs rather than that most of the time will put you in a good spot. And then last but not least is color. So you get fruit or veggie on the plate, check, you're good. If you can do that at all your meals, you're going to be so full off of the good stuff that it's going to be so hard to overeat. And then along with that, you want to have a structure. So, like I said, 3 meals, but a lot of people, like I know shift workers, medical workers, usually
Hmm.
don't have time for lunch or like they don't have
Yeah.
time for 3 meals. And that's okay. One of my favorite things for shift workers is instead of like the example I just gave, 3 meals, you would get 2 snacks. And that 2 snacks could be add ons, like it could be um, 2 drinks if you want to sub that in, or it could be something else, like basically having something that you substitute in. Let's say you're a shift worker. Instead of 3 plus 2, you now have 2 plus 3. So you have 2 big meals and 3 snacks or add ons. And that's an easy way to just keep yourself in check. So it's not, okay, I ate this donut at lunch. Fuck it the rest of the day. I'm going to eat whatever I want. No, you're like, okay, that's my +1. I have +2 left.
No,
So that's
it's a great, it's a great advice. It's great advice.
Yeah, and it's a simple way to just keep yourself in check because the real problem is that we just go off the rails. Like
Mhm.
we just say, you know what, I ate this one bad thing. Like you said, one meal doesn't make you skinny, one meal doesn't make you fat, but
Right.
people believe it does. So as soon as they have that one fat meal, they're like, well, the whole day's shot, and then the
Right.
whole week's shot, and then the whole month's shot, and then the whole year is shot. And that's the real problem here. So as
Right.
long as you have a structure, you're good to go. And then the last thing that you want to do is ingrain the habits that help you stay successful because a lot of people, the structure and the exercise is great, but it doesn't do the job because they self sabotage. And that's usually due to things like stress, sleep, other stuff that goes on, like environmental issues that they have going on. And that really is where you need a professional to help you out or just to have an honest conversation with yourself and be like, listen, I have this one issue that keeps coming up. Like I'm stressed to the gills because my parents are like going into a retirement facility and they're driving me nuts. Or at work, I am losing my absolute shit every single day to the point where I just want to go to the bar afterwards. Like those are things that you need to address because they're going to keep resurfacing over and over again. So
Mhm.
whether that's going to a mental health professional, whether that's going to a nutrition professional or going to your doctor for something, like if you have a medical condition that is that thing, that nail in the tire, you got to figure that out and then make
Mhm.
sure you set yourself up for success. And when you could do all that, along with everything we just talked about, you're going to be a-okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to address all those things before you can do anything else.
Yep. Yep. It's a lot of stuff. People want to like
Yeah.
really make this like, oh, I just need to eat better and exercise. It's like if only it were
No,
that easy.
no, exactly. It's a whole mindset. And I tell my patients that all the time. Like losing weight and it's always it's a change, right? Like there's the stages of change, like pre-contemplation, contemplation, all these things that we talk about. Like you have to be there and you have to be like ready to make that change, or else, like you said, like you'll and I can attest to I've done it before. Like I've tried to lose weight, I've been on a diet, and I literally it'll be like one day and I ate like the Skittles and I'm like, no, I'm gonna eat whatever I want now. It's fine. I'll go back on Monday. I'll start on Monday. Like it's me eating the Skittles today doesn't change what I'm gonna eat the rest of the day. It's just I wanted the Skittles, so I'm gonna have the Skittles. And I think
Exactly.
sometimes too, it's like giving in to sometimes those little cravings. Like it's okay. Like one thing of Skittles is not going to kill the rest of my diet, the rest of my week. You
Yeah.
just
And
don't do it.
that brings up a good point because a lot of people do have a lot of guilt and shame and anxiety surrounding food that does need to be addressed.
Hmm.
Because I know a lot of very fit people that are living in prison of their own making, where it's like, I can only stay this way because I need to eat perfect and never eat anything bad. And it's like,
Right.
instead of enjoying life and being healthy and like reaping all the benefits, they're only getting a fraction of that because they feel like they're stuck and they're like, I can't deviate at all. I can't ever have a cookie. I can't ever have alcohol. And it's like, okay, that's cool if you enjoy that, but if you're depriving yourself forever, that sounds kind of miserable.
Right, right. You don't want to be that, and those are, like you said, those are the things that I like to address with my patients too. Like, this is something that, yeah, it's going to be lifelong, but I don't want you to hate your life and like hate eating, and then you create that disordered like thought process in your brain, because if you hate food and you hate anything, I don't know, anything that's considered bad, I guess, like, I just don't, for me at least, that doesn't seem like a good quality of life. Like, I want you to still be able to enjoy life and enjoy that cookie every once in a while.
Exactly. And the closing thing that I want to bring to all this is the fact that along with everything we're talking about, doing it over and over and over again, you're going to solidify this new identity, and that needs to be embraced. Because if you keep thinking of yourself as the big girl or the husky guy or the one that usually clears the plate, the one that always is that fallback to like what you used to do, you're always going to fall back to that person and you're always going to go back to square one. So if you embrace this new version of yourself, it's going to make it so much easier to make the right decisions, because you're not in that space of, well, this is how I always ate. It's, this is how I do things now.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it all goes back to taking that stigma away from obesity and weight gain and everything like that. It's taking that stigma away. For so long, we've heard this negative connotation about, oh, well, your BMI is greater than 30, like you're obese, you're overweight. Like, we need to take that stigma away from it. And like you said, like, embrace that person, embrace the new person that you want to be, and literally turn the conversation more towards having a healthier, better quality of life than being worried about what other people think of you. And I can attest to it. I've struggled with weight my whole life. It's been something that I've been back and forth. I've struggled with it. And really, the point where I felt better was when I changed my mindset to like look in the mirror and be like, no, like, this is who you are. Like, you are beautiful, whether your BMI was 30 or your BMI is 25 or 20, whatever it is. And changing that mindset to just doing this because I want to be healthier. I want to be around longer. I have two beautiful kids. I want to be around for them. Like, changing that mindset around just being healthier, having a better quality of life. I want to be able to walk up the stairs. We're on the third floor of the building. I want to be able to walk up the stairs to my office and not be like gasping for air when I get up here. Like, those are the things that I try to implement with my patients, is like thinking about those things and like those little milestones, the things that you want to have a better quality of life, than thinking about like, oh, I hate what I look like when I look in the mirror.
Exactly. And that stuff rubs off. I know I've had plenty of conversations with clients where it's like they'll talk poorly about themselves and then it rubs off on the kids. And then in
Right.
reverse, all of a sudden it's like, oh, mom's doing this because she wants to feel good, because she wants to be healthy. And then kids are like, so what do I have to do to feel good and be healthy? Because I want to
Right.
be like mom, assuming they're younger and they're not teenagers that hate you yet. So
Actually, no, like, it's literally something that it's actually clicked for me recently, because my daughter is 4 and she's really cognizant of the things that I say. Like, she repeats back things that I say. So like, when I look in the mirror and I say like, oh, I hate like my body. I had my son 5 months ago. I had a C-section. I'm still not where I want to be, obviously. But when I look at my body, and she's standing next to me, I have to tell her like, no, I love myself. Like, my body made my son. He's wonderful. We did it the healthy way. And I feel good about myself, because she's listening to every little word that I say. If I say like, oh, I hate my stomach, or I hate my face, or whatever it is, like, it rubs off on her. She'll repeat things. And then in my head, I'm like, oh no, I have to be careful of what I'm saying and the things that are coming out of my mouth, because I don't want her to think those things about herself growing up. Like, the older she gets, the more I think I'm more cognizant of how I'm talking about myself, and that like kind of self-love type of conversation.
yeah, yeah, it makes a world of difference,
Hmm.
because I know these drugs are very much like, okay, I want to get myself healthy, but you could
Hmm.
literally change the course of not just your kids, but your entire generation coming up, like their kids and their kids. You can change the course of their lives.
Right.
Because a lot of times people are like, oh, we come from a heavy family. Imagine if one person puts their foot in the ground and says, this stops here.
Right, exactly, exactly. And that's what I want to implement to my patients. I want to implement for anybody that comes to me, is that like, this doesn't have to be, if you come to me and you say like, oh, well, everybody in my family was heavy. Everybody has always struggled with their weight or their cholesterol, or they've had heart attacks. Like, I want to stop it right there and be like, no, you can be the change going forward and be around for your kids long term. Like, we've seen a lot, and it's unfortunate there's a lot of younger people having heart attacks nowadays. Like, you'll see 30, 40 young people having heart attacks, and who knows what is it from. I don't know all of these people personally, but a lot of the time it could be from their lifestyle and their weight and everything like that. And if we can help them to some extent and stop that right there, and then they have a better quality of life and they don't have a heart attack and they're around for their family, like, that to me is, that's why I love what I do, because I want to help people have a better quality of life and be around for their family and their kids and whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I think that's a great spot to end it, because I think that's plenty of motivation. If that's
Yes.
not motivating and you guys aren't like jazzed up to go start exercising and like get your nutrition on track and set your appointment with your doctor, I don't know what else will.
I hope so. I hope so.
Now, before we head out, let's let the people know, because now you got your whole setup, your whole office, your
Yes. My
full-fledged
whole
ready to go,
practice, yeah.
your whole
Yeah, so I
practice.
am, for those who didn't listen at first, I'm a primary, well, I wasn't then, I was still a resident, but I am now a primary care physician in Toms River. I'm across the street from the hospital. We are at 67 Highway 37 West in the Riverwood 1 building. My name is Dr. Gerbino. I'll give my information to you. I'll give you like the link to the website. You can see my pretty headshot. And I'm accepting new patients. So if anybody's looking for a primary care physician, or just want to talk about their weight, whatever it is, that's what I'm here for. I don't just do weight management either. I do all chronic medical conditions, all under the internal medicine umbrella. So here
Yeah.
for
And
any and
and
all.
that's in New Jersey. So
Yes, New Jersey. Yes.
I'm sorry to the amazing listeners that are listening in from Hong Kong, Belgium, Canada. I see you guys on the metrics. I love you, but you got to do a little traveling for Dr. Gerbino.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure if telehealth would work either across state lines. I haven't figured that one out yet, but yeah, just in the New Jersey area. I'm in
Yep.
like South Jersey, so we do get some from like Pennsylvania-ish, but mostly southern New Jersey
Yeah,
area for now.
you get those Johns from Philly area.
Yeah.
I apologize, anybody from Philly that's like rolling their eyes right now. But and anybody who wants more information on the Fit 40 program, or even if you just want a free strategy call, that's what I do for you guys as podcast listeners. So if you want to set up a free strategy call where we could talk about everything I just outlined so that you're in a good spot, we could do that. Or if you want to just jump right into the program and get the full dose, pun intended, then you can click away at, there's also a link down there too that you could click, and we could set up a call and see if it's right for you. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening in. Thank you, Gabby, for joining us and giving us so much good information. And I hope that everybody got a lot out of this. All right. I'll see you all later. But until then, go kick some ass.